Okay, so we are in part 2 of our 4-part series that's leading up to Christmas, kind of going through some of the famous Christmas hymns and kind of looking at the lyrics and seeing, what they mean and how it speaks to us and how it changes us. Okay, so last week the hymn we started off with was O Come, Emmanuel. All right, so today we are going to be in the hymn, What Child Is This? Next week is O Come, All Ye Faithful, and then on December 22nd, we'll be looking at Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Okay, so this week is What Child Is This? And very briefly about the history of this hymn, right? The author is William Chatterton Dix. I love that name, Chatterton. That's a great middle name. It was written in 1865. It was based on the verse we just read, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 to 7. And the melody is actually based on an old song from back then called Greensleeves, right? So it's really cool, like that melody for O Child Is This is in other songs. And so, they did that back then. They do that now with different songs, right? It's a traditional folk song back from 1850s. And then you'll find that melody in different songs all the way from like the late 16th century to the early 17th century. So for a big chunk of time, that melody was very popular, and so they used it in different songs. So it's not just, What Child Is This? Of course, I think some of those other songs we don't know about anymore, so we all think it's just What Child Is This? Okay. All right, and so the reference of this song is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 to 7. We read that. I'm going to read that again, and then we're going to kind of explore that before we actually explore the lyrics of What Child Is This, okay? So Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 to 7 again. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness. From that time on and forever, the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Okay, so we're going to take a look at these two verses first in two ways. Okay, it's going to be in the names of Jesus and then what Jesus will do. Okay, so in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 to 7, there's several names given to Jesus, and it talks about what Jesus will do. Okay, so the names of Jesus. The first one is Wonderful Counselor. And I love that because I need guidance in my life. Do you? I feel like all of us, as we go through life, we really need it. We're always looking, how do I make wise decisions? And guidance is so important. So right from the beginning, right, Jesus is your wonderful counselor. He can guide you and counsel you through life. The next one is Prince of Peace. And I don't know about you, but I need peace in my life, right? The world is a place that can give you anxiety, right? The world is a place that can give you fear, and Jesus is there to give you peace. You can have peace in your life because of Jesus. And so I love that right from the beginning. It's Jesus is the wonderful counselor. He is the Prince of Peace. You can have peace in your life. And then it says that he is mighty God and everlasting Father, right? And so this Jesus that we're talking about here, that guides us, that gives us peace, isn't just like some guy who guides us and gives us peace, because people can do that, right? That's therapists. You can go into that career, go into that profession if you wanted to. You can study and you can help people and counsel people and hopefully give them some sense of peace. But Jesus isn't just that. He isn't some kind of, cosmic therapist, right? He is also mighty God, the everlasting Father. So for us to have Jesus in our lives, it's not just, oh yeah, Jesus can guide us and give us peace, but we also have the God of the universe, the creator of all things in our corner. That is very different than just like a cosmic counselor, cosmic therapist, which is unfortunately a lot of ways some people kind of relate with God. Right? We go to God when we're struggling, so we pray, and we're just kind of like, well, just kind of throw it out there, and maybe something will happen. And if it doesn't, I've got backup plans already. I've got and that's, God is so much more than that. Okay, so I love that. It's like the names of Jesus. He is the wonderful counselor. He is the Prince of Peace, but he is also mighty God and the everlasting Father. So those are the names of Jesus. But then these two verses talks about what will Jesus do? And the first thing is that he will reign on David's throne. And that basically means that Jesus is sovereign. All right? And so now all these names of Jesus and what he will do, they build off of each other. And you need all of it to kind of get this complete understanding of who God is, who Jesus is, right? And if you're missing one of them, it all kind of falls apart. Okay, so he's going to reign on David's throne. Jesus is sovereign. And so Jesus is guiding and giving you peace. And if that's all he did, but he wasn't sovereign, then he's kind of like a self-help guru, right? And we have those. Those do not transform you, right? But he is all of that, and he is sovereign. So it's important, right? So we have like he's wonderful counselor. He's the Prince of Peace. He's the mighty God, everlasting Father. Because a mighty God and an everlasting Father could also choose not to reign on earth. A lot of people kind of look at God that way. They look at God, yeah, I believe in God. I believe that he created everything. But I believe that he then just backed away and said, you know what? I'm going to let humanity do what they do. They want to destroy themselves? Go ahead. Right? A lot of people look at God that way, that God is not really active on earth. He just kind of created things and backed away. Right? And so in this passage, he's not just mighty God, everlasting Father, but he is going to reign on David's throne. He is going to take an active role here on earth, and he is going to be sovereign. He is sovereign. And the last one is that Jesus will establish and uphold with justice and righteousness. Right? Jesus' sovereignty isn't earthly justice and righteousness. Right? It's something greater than that. And that's important because, again, these all build off of each other. Right? You can have Jesus, who is wonderful counselor, right? Who is the Prince of Peace, who is mighty God and everlasting Father, and who is sovereign, but he's sovereign in a way that is not benevolent. He's sovereign in a way that's not right, if you want to call it that. God would have the right and the authority to do that if he wanted. Right? Of course, that kind of scenario is also not very pleasant. And I do believe some Christians also kind of look at it that way, right? They look at the world, they look at their lives, and when things go wrong, they kind of feel like, oh yeah, well, God is doing these things to maybe teach us, humans a lesson or whatever, right? And they kind of look at God as someone who is very, vengeful and punishing and condemning, and look at God that way. And that's not the God of Scripture, right? God, he establishes and upholds his sovereignty, his eternal kingdom with justice and righteousness, right? So each one of the names of Jesus and what Jesus does builds on each other. And we need all of it. We need all of that understanding for us to relate to Jesus and to kind of have this right relationship with Jesus. Okay, so that's Isaiah. That's a very brief part of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 to 7. And that was the kind of like the basis for What Child Is This? So What Child Is This is the hymn we're going to be going through. I'm going to read the lyrics. Last week I kind of went through each verse at a time. This time I'm going to read the whole thing, and we're just kind of do like one big question, because that's kind of how the hymn is set up, okay? So let me read the lyrics of What Child Is This? So it goes like this. What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch are keeping? And so that reference, the angels, is when the angels appeared to the shepherds to announce the birth of Jesus in Luke chapter 2. And the chorus repeats after each verse, says, this is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him laud, the babe, the son of Mary. That word laud just means praise. Old language. Of course, now we have words that, Gen Z and Gen Alpha use that the rest of us are like, what? Right? I actually learning a lot of these words now because my kids are growing up. Like this year I learned what sus means. I learned what riz means. And I'm like, oh, okay, Some of them make sense, some of them don't. Right? But so laud means praise, okay? And the next verse goes, why lies he in such mean estate where ox and lamb are feeding? Good Christian, fear, for sinners here, the silent word is pleading. And so where ox and lamb are feeding, that's referencing that Jesus was born in a manger, which is probably more like the side of like a little cave, right? Because some of the pictures we have of a nice little wooden structure with hay, it's like sure maybe, but actually wood was a little bit rare in that part of the world. So a lot of times they like to use caves as nice things. So actually a lot of mangers are in caves. So most likely Jesus was born in a small cave, okay? And then the last verse says, so bring him incense, gold, and myrrh, come peasant king to own him. The King of Kings salvation brings, let loving hearts enthrone him, right? And so the gifts, the incense, gold, and myrrh is referencing the gifts that the Magi brought in Matthew chapter 2, okay? All right. So that's the lyrics of the song. Basically, this song is there's like a question and an answer, okay? And the question is this. It's in the name of the song. What child is this, right? You have this baby born in a manger, and clearly something is special here, right? But what child is this that you have angels announcing it? You have these wise men, these rulers, whoever they are, from a faraway land who saw a star that was weird looking and followed it. Like something is going on. What child is this? And the answer is this. It's in the course, right? This is Christ the King. It's a proclamation that this child, this little baby, is Christ the King. And now, here's the thing. If you start imagining how this kind of played out, 2,000 years ago, right? You have this baby born in a cave in a small town of Bethlehem, right? No one looks at a poor child whose extended family won't even give up a room so his pregnant teenage mom can birth him. No one looks at this kind of baby and thinks, oh yeah, that's the King of Kings, right? Because now that's kind of what's happening, right? We have this image of Mary and Joseph, on this lone journey in their little, camel. It's like the equivalent of the Toyota Corolla. It's like, hey, it's reliable, and we're gonna go. But that's not what happened. Nobody travels alone. You're going to get robbed back then, right? And so most likely they're traveling together with extended family to Bethlehem, right? And so the fact that there's no room, it's because there's extended family and everybody's kind of trying to get somebody to let them in and that kind of stuff, right? Which means that a lot of his family did get rooms. Now think about it. If you were to have a family reunion and one of your cousins was pregnant, 9 months pregnant, you would at least say, hey, you could have this room, right? For you to say, yeah, no, that's my room. Yeah, there's that cave over there with the animals. I don't care if you're pregnant. You go stay. There's some stuff going on in that family, right? Why? Because this is a teenage girl who is pregnant and who's going to marry this man who they know, I don't know, might not be the dad, or you guys were not following the Jewish traditions of, marriage and sexuality and that kind of stuff, right? And so that's the world that Jesus enters. No one looks at this kind of baby and thinks, King of Kings. And yet, this is the Christ we proclaim, right? When we look at that baby, we're saying, this is Christ the King. And here, the crazy thing is, this is what God does, right? God takes all of humanity's understanding of worth and value and power and prestige, and this is how you kind of make it in life. This is what you need to do. God takes that and just flips it upside down. Because here's the thing. Many Christians today, we want power, just like the world. We want power and influence. We want our people in government. We want laws that will make everybody kind of live and with Christian values, because that's the right way to do things. And those are all, Christian values are great, right? But that's what we want. We want power. We want to kind of force that on everybody. We want influence, right? How many of you guys have heard of the saying, put Christ back in Christmas? Right? It's like, oh, right. And then we also want a movie industry, like a Christian movie industry and a Christian music industry that rivals Hollywood and any pop star, right? That we got The Chosen now, right? They're up to season 5, and it's actually pretty good. It's like, oh my goodness, this is way better than Left Behind. And you guys know what I'm talking about. The original Left Behind series, it's like, just not going to say anything about it, okay? Right, and it's getting better. Those aren't bad things, right? But if you look at kind of the spirit behind it, and the spirit that kind of is in that is a spirit that says I want influence. I want Christians to have power and influence, and those aren't bad. Power in itself and influence in itself aren't bad things. But if you look at the spirit behind it. When I say spirit, I mean attitude, not whether there's a holy evil spirit behind it. It's just the attitude behind it. That attitude matches the Pharisees' attitude much better than it matches Jesus, right? Because the world and a lot of Christians, and especially in the Pharisees back then, right? It tries to use the world's strategies to accomplish God's purpose. It tries to use the strategies of power, influence, and wealth. Think about it. For you young people, you don't remember the days before influencers, right? But there was a day before influencers, right? Well, I remember when influencers came out, we were just like, oh man, this is dumb. These people will never make any money. This guy, Jake Paul, oh, good luck. You're gonna be poor in a couple. And now they're so right. There's a method to it, right? If you want to build be a content creator, there's a method to. Here are the steps you need to do to gain influence, to get your stuff out there. I'm not saying those are that's a wrong thing. I'm saying those are strategies that the world uses, and God does not do that. Right? God could have. I mean, if you think about if there was some kind of board meeting in heaven, which doesn't exist, but they're just saying if they had that, right? And God's like, hey guys, it's almost time. Gonna incarnate and become human to save the world. How do I want to do this? If we were up there, we wouldn't be like, Jesus, how about don't tell anyone, and just kind of sneak in the smallest. No, we would say, okay, Jesus, here's your media plan. I got it from the marketing team at Wicked because, man, they spent like $1 billion on that thing. Everyone knows about the movie before it came out, right? And here's what we're going to do. We're going to put these. That's how you would think to do that, and yet that is not how God does things. God doesn't work that way. He has never worked that way. So how does God work? If you want to look at, okay, how did Jesus enter the world, and then how did Jesus operate in the world? He does it through humility. Right? Jesus entered our world with no fanfare, no marketing, in like the lowest possible like social economic group. Right? He did it with humility. He did it with sacrifice. Right? Jesus set aside everything about being God to become a human being. Right? If you think, for God to then kind of come down and be the greatest human ever in terms of intellect and physical and athletic abilities and beauty, if that's what if Jesus came and was just like, I don't know, like picture whatever you want to picture, like, I don't know, like Thor or something like that, right? He's like, oh, we would say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it would make sense that God would say, I will lower myself to that, which is still very impressive, to like save the world. But no, he doesn't do that. He becomes like the lowest of the low among humans. Jesus did it through sacrifice. He did it through service. Jesus served throughout his time on earth. That's what he does. He did it through grace. He did it through mercy, right? He gives grace, a gift we don't deserve, and he gives us mercy. He withholds righteous anger against us who do deserve it. He is crucified on a cross, and he still doesn't bring his righteous anger down on people who totally deserved it. And Jesus did it through forgiveness. I mean, he forgave us. We were the ones that put Jesus on the cross. Right? It's like it wasn't, the Pharisees, and it wasn't the Romans, it was us. It was our sin that did it. I don't know, back in, early 2000s, the Passion movie, I don't know, it's that, like, I feel like that was big for a while, and then it's 20-something years later. But it was the story of the last week of Jesus, and it was a Mel Gibson movie, right? But anyways, there was a scene when Jesus is nailed to the cross, and like Mel Gibson made sure that when that scene was shot, it was actually his hand that held the nail, right? Because he was trying to say, like, I know that this is my own sin that put him on the cross. And we know that he's problematic. He's done some stuff since then, but that was a moment, right? Like, Jesus forgives us, and we were the ones that put him on the cross. And so that's how God works, right? And so today, for us, this Christmas, remember who and what we are proclaiming, right? This is Christ the King. Right? This is Christ the King. This little baby that seems to be insignificant, that no one knew about. That when the Magi came, Herod had to been like, wait, what's going on now? Right? This is Christ the King. Right? The King that works through humility and sacrifice and service and grace and mercy and forgiveness. And so for us today, follow Christ. Follow that kind of Christ. Follow the King. Right? It's interesting. In America, Christians really complain about persecution. We complain that, like, the world is against us, and all that kind of stuff, right? They say, if I say this in work, I might get fired. And it's like, sure. But the reality is, Christians have a ton of power. I think we have more power and influence now than we've had for many, many decades, right? But a lot of Christians are still wanting more because that's what power does to you. And so today, don't follow that picture of God, follow this baby. This is Christ the King. Follow Jesus, who is characterized by humility, sacrifice, service, grace, mercy, and forgiveness. And let that be the way you live out your faith. Let that be the way you are characterized. That when somebody looks at you and finds out you're a Christian, they're like, oh, wow, if I were to describe you, I would describe you as someone who is humble, who is serving and sacrificial and has grace and mercy and forgiveness. Let's pray.